At 8:14 p.m., under a $12,000 chandelier at the Crescent Hotel in Dallas, my new daughter-in-law lifted a gold microphone and called me a fat pig. The band stopped mid-note. Forks froze. My son stared at the floor like there was a confession written in the carpet. I set down my water glass so gently the condensation didn't dare run. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I didn't argue. I counted. I counted the $41,200 venue fee I'd seen on the contract I was asked to spot when a card declined. The $2,800 peonies in the centerpieces that wilted under the uplights, and the $29,700 hotel block I'd guaranteed because the app glitched. I counted the witnesses, Table E bridesmaids who gasped, Rex Dalton's executives at Table C who smirked into their napkins, and the DJ whose board sent every word into the ballroom and, helpfully, into the black recorder in my pocket. A public insult broadcast on a PA isn't private. I tapped voice memos and saved the file with a name I could live with, 814 Chandelier. Rex, Ava's father, owner of Dalton Industrial Logistics, crossed the dance floor in a navy tux that fit like a threat. He squeezed my shoulder the way men pat dogs they don't own. "She jokes rough," he said, bourbon breath sweet as fake apology. "We're family now." I smiled like a hinge that still works after the paint chips. My son, Evan, mouthed sorry from 6 feet away and didn't move closer than 4. I lifted my blue folder on the way back from the corridor. No one noticed. It looked like any father guarding his blood pressure meds. Inside were printed invoices, a florist estimate with a coffee ring, and a term sheet that had nothing to do with lilies or cake. I had underlined one number in careful blue pencil, 699 840 taus due, 6/27, the balloon on Rex's bridge loan with Sunvale Bank. I hadn't learned it by snooping. A bank manager named Sophia Pena had explained lien filings to me. Public if you know where to look, and how balloons work when pride is heavier than the cash flow. Ava grabbed the mic again for the bouquet toss. "Let's make sure our elders don't eat the flowers," she added, eyes sliding over me like I was a chair. Laughter scattered across the ballroom, nervous and hungry. I studied the surface of my water. One drop crawled down the side and stopped at my thumb. An oven timer ticked in my head, the kind Elena used to set when she made peach cobbler, the kind you wind and let work while the house fills with something better than noise. At dessert, the band went soft, and the servers floated plates of vanilla bean cake that tasted like nothing. I folded my napkin into a small boat and set it afloat on the tablecloth. The bridesmaids at Table E whispered. The COO from Dalton, a careful woman named Myra, watched Rex the way people watch a crossing light. I marked her in my mind next to a list titled Steady Hands. When the last toast fizzled and the DJ switched to something with too much bass, I stepped into the foyer and breathed cool air that didn't need me to apologize to it. I took out a pen and wrote 3 lines on the back of a place card. 6:27, wire cut off 2 p.m. Sunvale wants a plan. No shouting, paper and time. Then I slid the place card into the blue folder, touched the folded draft of a purchase agreement I'd been carrying like a saint medal, and walked back into the ballroom as if nothing had happened. Because now nothing had. The something would be lawful, quiet, and on schedule. Sunday morning, May 18th, Dallas woke up in that pale heat that comes before noon, and I drove to White Rock Lake with the windows cracked so the air could argue with the stale perfume of last night's ballroom. I parked by the boathouse and sat on a bench that faced a sheet of water the color of pewter. Church bells from somewhere behind the trees counted a slow 10. I counted with them and came up short. The first clean thought I had was of Eleanor, her voice at our old kitchen sink saying, "Don't let anybody turn your work invisible." The second thought was less clean, the gold microphone, the word pig, the laughter that didn't know what it meant yet. I took out my phone and played the recording I'd saved as 814 Chandelier. It wasn't revenge, It was proof that my memory hadn't gilded the cruelty. You can hear the band die mid-note, a fork clink, then Ava's laugh. I paused it there because I didn't want to get used to it. At 9:12 a.m., I was home. I put the blue folder on the kitchen table and made coffee strong enough to read by. Bills lay everywhere like paper lilies. Title company statement showing $912,400 net from the land sale. The tax escrow reminder stamped due 601. And the florist invoice I'd covered because the vendor's portal is glitching, bright as a bruise. Peony Suite, $2,800 paid by M. Hale. I smoothed it flat with the heel of my hand, the way you calm a child or a back of the neck. At 11:07 a.m., my phone lit the table. Evan, you know Ava jokes. Don't be dramatic. There should be warning. Labels on some words. Dramatic is a soft blade. It tells you a wound is your performance. I stared at the text until the letters crawled. Then I put the phone screen down and spoke out loud just to hear a reasonable voice. You are not dramatic. You are taking inventory. I opened my ledger. Yellow-lined, dates in ink, amounts, in pencil. The first line I wrote was a heading the size of mercy. Week 1, audit, find the leaks, breathe. Under that, I listed what I could prove without anybody's permission. Hotel block charge, $29,700 I'd guaranteed with my card, and a handshake? A venue deposit I'd spotted when a card declined. Small drips like $188 for macarons labeled vendor meat, $76 for monogram napkins to see the font, and $420 courier fee. Dalton Industrial that had slid onto my statement in March like a raccoon through a dog door. I circled that one. A knock. Lydia came in with her elbows and banana bread because that's how neighbors who've lived through each other's winters operate. She's a CPA who files like a librarian swears. You look like a man who's been mispriced, she said. Putting the loaf on a cooling rack I never use. I told her the short version, the mic, the laugh, the shoulder squeeze. Then I showed her my ledger as if it were a sore tooth. She didn't say dramatic. She put on her reading glasses and said, let's roll this forward. For an hour and a half, we reconciled. On my laptop, I opened the statements, and she built a simple spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, what it was called when it wanted to sound necessary. Look how they rename luxury as logistics, she said, tapping bridal suite comfort, dial $260, that turned out to be influencer candles. She color-coded anything that smelled like Dalton Industrial. Why is a logistics company's courier running through your personal account? She pointed to the $420 charge again. Did you authorize it? I shook my head. Did you benefit? Another headshake. She made a small sound people make when the numbers spell a sentence they've heard too many times. I took the crumpled candle receipt from the junk drawer because the story would need ordinary paper too, not just big slips. The ink had bled where someone set it under a sweating glass. I put it on the table and smoothed it with 2 fingers. On the top I wrote the date I paid it, 4/12, and underlined twice. No shouting, Lydia said, reading my eyes. No Facebook, paper first. She slid the spreadsheet back to me. Totals at the bottom read $14,860 since October, disguised as emergencies, bridal hospitality, and vendor couriers. She put her phone over the column like a lid. You want me to mirror your files? I nodded. She snapped. Scans on a little portable device that purrs like a cat. I'll keep copies. You keep originals. Chain of custody matters, she said almost to herself. The oven timer in my head started that steady wind-up tick. I stood, wound the real one to 20 minutes, and set it on the counter so the kitchen could keep time with me. While it ticked, I flipped over a place card from last night and wrote 3 names. Sophia Pena, Oak Cliff Credit Union, Glass Partition Peppermint Bowl. 2, Myra, Dalton COO, Steady Hands. 3, Coley, old client, buys companies carefully. Lydia pointed at the first name. Sophia will explain what's public without getting fired, she said. Ask about liens and balloons. Don't ask for anything that isn't yours. She pointed at the second. If there's a grown-up in that building, it'll be her. Then the third. If you let a buyer look, keep it clean. Public filings, press, nothing you wouldn't. Read aloud. The timer ticked. My phone buzzed again. Evan. Can we just move on? It was a joke. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard and wrote only one reply. We will move forward, not past. I set the phone face down again. I opened voice memos, hit record, and talked to the future version of me who might need reminding. Sunday, May 18th, I said, keeping my voice level. You are not angry. You are accurate. You will not raise your voice. You will raise your paperwork. I described the spreadsheet totals, the courier fee, the smell of banana bread cooling like patience, the way the blue folder made a soft thump when I closed it. I stopped the recording and saved. It as inventory, paper and time. Lydia rinsed 2 coffee mugs. Tomorrow, she said, go see Sophia, then eat lunch. Then call Coley and ask for 15 minutes, not a favor. You'll get more that way. She dried her hands on a dish towel with peaches on it, Elena's, and hung it back on the oven handle without looking at me to see if I'd noticed. The timer dinged, one clear note that sounded like permission. I walked to my bedroom closet, took out the navy jacket whose pockets I trust, and slid the blue folder. Inside, I added a clean legal pad, 2 pens, and the florist invoice with its coffee ring, because a courtroom and a boardroom both believe a stain more than a speech. On the front of the legal pad, I wrote Monday, bank, Tuesday, call, Wednesday, diner. Under that, no shouting, paper and time. Then I underlined time, because nothing humiliates a swagger like a deadline with a witness. Monday morning, May 19th, came with the smell of rain on concrete, a scent that always reminds me of construction bids and deadlines. I ironed my navy shirt, slipped the blue folder into my briefcase, and drove to Oak Cliff Credit Union. Inside, the air smelled faintly of peppermint and printer toner. Sophia Peña sat behind a glass partition, her cardigan the color of sand. She'd helped me open my escrow account after the land sale, and she greeted me with that professional warmth bankers use when they sense both pain and precision. Morning, Mr. Hale. How's retirement treating you? Depends which ledger you're looking at, I said, setting my folder down. She laughed politely. I leaned forward. I need to understand something about liens and bridge loans. Not mine, someone else's, but public. Sophia adjusted her glasses. If it's recorded with the Secretary of State, you can look it up. The name? Dalton Industrial Logistics. Her eyebrows twitched in recognition. She turned her monitor. Slightly, typed, and scrolled. Sunvale Bank, filed February 10th. Bridge loan. 10.5% interest. Balloon due. Friday, June 27th. I felt the numbers settle into place like bricks. That date, 6/27, is fixed. Fixed, she said. They'll either pay or refinance, and with that rate, it's risky. Can anyone see this? Anyone who knows where to look? She slid a printed example across the glass, showing me the UCC filing portal. Public record. Just don't pull any documents you're not authorized for. I wouldn't, I said. Thank you, Sophia. When I left, I wrote 3 details in my ledger. 10.5%, balloon 6/27, Sunvale, Tushorn leverage. That evening, I called an old client, Mr. Rajesh Coley, a man who buys companies the way surgeons study x-rays. His voice came through the line low and curious. Hale, he said. Haven't heard that name since you saved me $1 million on that bid. I'm calling about another structure that's about to collapse, I replied. Dalton Industrial. Logistics. There was a silence, then a clink of porcelain. That's a big fish. Why are you watching them? I'm not watching them, I said. They married into me. He laughed. short and sympathetic. Meet me, Wednesday noon, Lemon Avenue Diner. Wednesday arrived humid and grey. Coley sat in a corner booth, napkin draped neatly over his cup like a lid. I slid into the seat across from him and handed over only what was lawful: public lien records, a newspaper clipping about delayed shipments, and notes from my own observations. He read silently, fingers tracing the margins. Distressed logistics, he murmured. Thin margins, heavy assets, predictable failure. Then he looked up. If Dalton's board panics, they'll sell cheap to keep face. You still have liquidity from your land sale? Escrowed. $912,400 untouched. I'd contribute to diligence only. The rest stays cold. Fair, he said. I'll start quiet diligence. Public data only. No tricks? He pulled out a small leather notebook and wrote a date, June 27th. Deadline. We let the timer run, he said. When pride meets paper, pride folds first. Thursday, May 22nd, I formalized the deal, $100,000 from my proceeds into Coley's diligence escrow. Not a cent more. I called Sophia to verify the wire, then closed the account folder with a calm click. That night, rain slicked the streets. I hired a licensed PI named Morrison, a veteran who still carried himself like he was guarding a gate. I don't need hacks, I told him. Just eyes. Photos of who goes in and out of Dalton HQ between now and June. Public property only, he asked. Only, I said. He smiled. The lawful kind of trouble, my favorite. When I hung up, I opened my ledger and wrote across the top of a clean page. Week 2, watch the gate. Listen for paper. I slid the folded placeholder purchase agreement into my jacket pocket. It wasn't signed, not even priced. It was just a promise of calm readiness, a live paper, not bluster. Then I sat at my kitchen table and whispered to the dark. The timer's ticking, Rex. I'm not angry. I'm early. Friday, May 23rd, I woke before the alarm, the way I used to before a major bid presentation. The sky over Dallas was a dull blue, the kind that hides intent. My coffee tasted like burnt almonds, but I drank it anyway, staring at the printed PI report Morrison had emailed overnight. 3 courier runs to Dalton's yard after hours, a midnight visit from a Sunvale bank associate, and a note scribbled at the bottom. Looks like low nerves. No signs of new financing. That was confirmation enough. Pressure was building, and Rex Dalton was sweating behind his gold watch. Saturday brought the post-wedding brunch at Ava and Evan's new Lakewood rental, a house staged like a magazine, spread and leased for too much money. The champagne tower trembled each time someone laughed too loudly. Ava floated across the deck in white linen, saying, "We're moving to Highland Park next month. Daddy says it's time for a real home." I smiled, swirling my club soda. Must be nice to upgrade during a liquidity squeeze. She blinked. "A what?" Rex filled the silence with a booming laugh. "Old habits. He still talks like a project manager, always counting risks." "Someone should," I said, my tone polite as I set down the glass. His COO, Myra, was there too, steady, eyes, calm posture. When I asked about Dalton's distribution bottlenecks, she said carefully, "Weather delays mostly." Then glancing at Rex, "We hit our covenants last quarter." The way she said last told me the next one would hurt. That evening, Lydia came by with her laptop. We combed through another round of my statements. One charge leapt out. $1,260 for bridal suite comfort package. I pulled the receipt from a pile on my counter. "Influencer candles," I said, reading the small print. "Billed to my card." Lydia photographed it for her mirrored drive, labeling it "Candles Proof." "Keep it," she said. "Courts believe paper, not people." Sunday, May 25th, the air smelled like ozone. I drove to Dalton Industrial's yard under the guise of a retiree curious about operations. Wearing a safety vest, I signed the public guest log. No deceit, no pretense. I walked the perimeter slowly. 6 trailers sat idle, each tagged out of service. Through the open bay doors, I overheard a dispatcher mutter, "Backlog till June 30th if we're lucky." I didn't take photos. I didn't need to. I logged it in my ledger that night. 6 idle trailers, backlog June 30th, Rex bleeding cash. At home, I ironed a shirt, the sound of steam soft and rhythmic. I laid Peña's business card beside my pen and circled the printed line. Wire cutoff, Fry 6:27 at 2 p.m. Then I texted Coley a single line, idle equipment, plus June choke, confirmed. He replied within a minute, just a clock emoji. That tiny symbol felt heavier than any insult. It meant we wait, but the fuse is lit. At 10 p.m., I sat in the dark kitchen, wound the oven timer to 20 minutes, and listened to it tick. Each click was a heartbeat counting down to the moment arrogance meets arithmetic. When it dinged, I closed my ledger, looked toward the city skyline glowing faintly through my blinds and whispered, "Your clock's louder than mine now, Rex. Let's see who hears it first." June 1st arrived with the kind of Texas heat that bleaches the morning sky before breakfast. The calendar flipped to the month that would decide everything. I poured coffee, opened my ledger, and wrote across the top, Week 3, Pressure Tests. Coley's diligence had begun quietly. His analysts requested public data through Dalton's vendor portal and cross-checked it with state filings. Every move was by the book. On June 3rd, he texted, "Good bones, soft cash flow." Translation, the company could survive if someone stopped Rex from strangling it with ego. That same morning, Morrison, the PI, sent a photo. Rex shaking hands with a man in a grey suit outside Sunvale Bank. The man's body language said, no. His briefcase stayed closed. Morrison's caption was simple. Meeting ended cold. Loan renewal likely denied. The next day, Ava posted a story from a charity bowling event, Fun with the Daltons, and tagged Sunvale Bank as sponsor. The irony nearly choked me. Their lane glittered with LED lights, and in the background sat a brochure. When no one watched, I picked one up. On the back, bridge loans, 30-60-day balloons. I folded it neatly and slipped it into my jacket. I texted myself, marketing, copy, Altaro's timeline. By June 5th, the air inside my townhouse felt too still. Evan called. "Dad, could you float us this month's rent, just till I get my commission?" "How much?" $4,200. "Put it in writing," I said. He hesitated. "That'll make it weird." "Then let's keep it weird," I said, and hung up. That night, I walked past the old clock Elena and I bought when Evan was born. It had stopped at 9:14 years ago, a moment frozen in brass. I didn't fix it. I liked one clock in the house that refused to move for anyone. June 8th, I met Myra at a coffee shop near Knox Street. She wore a grey blazer, unbuttoned but ironed to precision. "You said you wanted to talk safety metrics," she said, but her tone carried something else. Fatigue. "I noticed 6 idle trailers last week," I said. "From the public road, of course." She looked down at her latte. "We've missed 2 chassis payments. The board meets June 30th. Rex thinks he can bluff Sunvale again." I slid a folded document across the table, a simple NDA drafted by Lydia. If a buyer comes forward, this protects you if you choose to cooperate. Myra didn't sign it. She tapped the paper once, then slid it back. "I can't yet, but if you're planning something clean, keep your receipts. They'll bury you in theirs." When I got home, I filed her warning under steady hands. Lydia texted that same night, "Numbers checkout. They're bleeding at least $40K a week. You're early, not crazy." On June 10th, Coley sent a courier to deliver an indication of interest. A single-page letter, no numbers, just intent. Prepared to stabilize operations and retain staff. I sealed it in an envelope, hand-addressed it to Dalton Industrial, and walked to the blue mailbox at the corner. The street smelled like rain on hot asphalt. When the envelope slid through the slot, the metal clink was cleaner than any applause. I stood there a long moment, fingers still on the edge, listening to that faint echo of delivery. Every story of mine, every contract, every betrayal had begun with paper. It was fitting that this one would end with it too. As I walked home, streetlights came on one by one, timed by someone else's invisible hand. I didn't need to rush. The timer was set, the fuse was lawful, and the silence, for the first time in weeks, was on my side. June 15th. Dallas felt like an oven that Sunday evening, and Rex Dalton had decided to serve his own brand of heat. The text came through at 3:14 p.m. Rex, family dinner, Del Frisco's, 7 p.m. Let's clear the air. Clear the air, I muttered, closing my ledger. Men like Rex never clear the air. They perfume it with arrogance. Still, I ironed a shirt, tucked my blue folder into the jacket pocket, and drove into uptown dusk. Del Frisco's was the kind of steakhouse that spoke in mahogany and money. The waiter addressed Rex as if he owned the building. Ava and Evan were already at the table, champagne waiting, smiles rehearsed. Rex's bourbon glass shone like an award. "Glad you came," he said. "We're family after all, family." The word landed like a rusted nail. Ava reached over, covering my hand with hers. "We all said things at the wedding we didn't mean," she said. Her diamond caught the light. "Let's put it behind us, okay?" I smiled, calm as paper. Behind. Yes, but not erased. The waiter set down the tomahawk ribeye, 40 ounces of ego on a plate. Rex raised his bourbon. To new beginnings. That was my cue. I reached into my jacket, removed a single slip of paper, and placed it beside the salt shaker. A cashier's check stub, $50,000, labeled Diligence Budget, Dalton Industrial. The silence was immediate. Rex leaned in. "What's this?" "An expression of confidence," I said, "from someone who believes Dalton can still be saved." Ava laughed sharply. "Dad, he's obsessed. He's been stalking the business since the wedding." Evan groaned. "Can we not do this here?" I didn't answer. I wanted Rex to read the label 3 times, the way a man rereads a sentence that spells his own ending. Finally, he set it down. "You think you can buy your way into my company?" "No," I said softly. "I think your bank already owns. And I'm offering to pay the interest on your pride." He went red, fingers tightening around the glass. "You've been snooping." "Public record," I said. "And I believe Sunvale calls next week." Ava hissed. "You're pathetic." The steak between us cooled untouched. A family of 4 at the next table whispered. I kept my hands on the table, palms open. "I'm just making sure the people who actually work at Dalton still have jobs." In July, Rex threw his napkin down. "You'll hear from my lawyer." "I hope so," I said. "They'll recognize the offer." We left separately. Outside, the heat hit like a punishment. My phone buzzed as I reached my truck. "Myra, Sunvale called. Covenants tripped. They want a plan by June 27th. I texted back one word. "Perfect." At home, I didn't turn on the lights. I wound the oven. Timer to 20 minutes, and sat at the kitchen table listening. Each click echoed the heartbeat of a clock winding down, somewhere inside Dalton Industrial. When the timer dinged, I wrote in my ledger, June 27th, a deadline. Board meets June 30th. Add 2 chairs. Then, underlined twice, patience is the loudest sound. In the room, I leaned back, closed the ledger, and smiled to the dark. "The timer's set, Rex," I whispered. "You're just not the one who gets to hear it ring first." Monday, June 30th. The city rose behind a wall of glass, and inside that glass, Rex Dalton tried to look like a man still in control. Dalton Industrial's boardroom sat on the 17th floor, a view of the Dallas skyline so sharp it could cut you. I wore my best navy jacket and carried the same blue folder that had been with me since the wedding. Myra had arranged 2 extra chairs at the far end of the long table. The air smelled faintly of copier ink and tension. Rex began with the kind of speech that men make when they know they're bleeding but won't admit it. Legacy, he said, tapping his notes. We're facing short-term headwinds, but our fundamentals are strong. Sunvale's proud to back us. Sunvale's credit officer, a quiet man with a folder thinner than Rex's, didn't blink. Before we continue, I said softly, may I have 2 minutes as both a vendor and a family member? Rex didn't look up. This isn't a family matter. The board chair, a woman with steel grey hair and no patience, cut him off. Let him speak. I opened my folder and placed the first document on the table. A wire confirmation from Oak Cliff Credit Union, time-stamped Friday, June 27th, 1:43 p.m. 699th 842s, Dalton Bridge Settlement, Sunvale Clearance Account. The Sunvale officer leaned forward. We received those funds Friday afternoon. Your balloon has been satisfied, Mr. Dalton. Rex blinked, confused. That's impossible. I laid down the second document, a crisp purchase agreement signed by Coley Venture Partners. The funds came from our diligence escrow, I said. Mr. Coley's firm wired the remainder. The offer is clean, fair, and keeps everyone employed. The grey-haired chair adjusted her glasses. Employment guaranteed for staff. Myra promoted to COO. Mr. Dalton offered a paid advisory role, if he consents. The Sunvale officer added, our covenants require a capital plan. This qualifies. Rex's face turned crimson. You went around me. No, I said. I went through the front door with a cashier's window, a notary, and a deadline your pride ignored. The room went very still. You could hear the hum of the air vent, the pen click from the chair's hand. Then the boardroom door opened. Ava stormed in, phone in hand, eyes wide. This is abusive. You're humiliating my family. I met her stare calmly. You did that yourself. I slid a printout across the table, her wedding toast transcript, verbatim, recorded lawfully. From the ballroom PA, some people just eat and contribute nothing. Our resident fat pig. She froze. Rex's mouth opened, but the chair raised a hand. Enough. Myra, steady as always, said quietly, the company needs stability. Pride isn't a strategy. The chair looked at her, then at me. We accept the offer, she said at 9:37 a.m. Subject to council review. Coley's voice came over speakerphone, calm and surgical. Funds ready, let's keep people working. Rex slumped back, muttering something that never quite formed a word. The Sunvale officer signed a preliminary acknowledgement, sliding it. Toward Myra, I gathered my folder, leaving behind only the papers that mattered. As I stood, the chair met my eyes. Mr. Hale, what motivated you? Paper, I said. And time. A clock ticked somewhere in the hall. It wasn't the sound of victory, just gravity doing its job. When I reached the elevator, Ava's voice cracked behind me. You ruined us. I didn't turn around. No, I said as the doors closed. I stopped you from ruining everyone else. That same afternoon, June 30th, sunlight spilled through Dalton's loading dock windows, turning the air gold over the rows of trucks. The entire floor buzzed with half-whispered news. The company had been sold, but no one was losing their job. Myra stood on a pallet in her safety vest, hair pulled back, her voice steady as she told the crews about the transition. Operations continue. Payroll stays uninterrupted. Mr. Dalton remains as senior advisor. The men clapped, careful, polite, grateful. It wasn't celebration. It was relief. I stood at the edge of the floor beside a vending machine that still took quarters. For the first time in 6 weeks, I didn't need to calculate silence. The math had finished itself. Rex appeared in the corridor, red-faced and furious. His tie was gone, his eyes glassy. You'll pay for this, he spat, stopping just inches away. I already did, I said, holding his stare. Check the wire. He froze. Words failed him. Myra's voice echoed from the dock, still addressing the team. He looked small, framed by the sunlight and the sound of applause that wasn't for him anymore. When I left the building, Ava's face lit my phone screen. An Instagram story. Cutting out toxic elders. Growth means boundaries. A glossy selfie, filtered into fiction. I didn't reply. That evening, Evan texted, "Evan, why embarrass me like that?" I took a photo of the spreadsheet Lydia and I built. The 14,860 siphoned through my accounts, color-coded by month. I sent it along with a snapshot of the candle receipt, the one she'd called Influencer Essential. Me. I never embarrassed you. I accounted for you. I never pressed charges, never called HR, never went to social media. I didn't need a courtroom. I had paper. When I got home, Lydia had already filed the day's documents under protective actions. She'd labeled each folder with a clean, black marker, wire, 627, Boardroom, 6:30, Sunvale confirmation. Paid. At 8:10 p.m., Sophia Peña called from the bank. "I just wanted to confirm receipt," she said. "Sunvale cleared the loan officially. You closed the loop, Mr. Hale." "Thank you, Sophia," I said. "Please print the slip for my record." That night I opened my mailbox. Among the usual flyers and statements sat a pastel thank you card, floral and cheery. "Thank you for your generous wedding support," it read in Ava's handwriting. The date on the postmark was backdated, 3 weeks earlier. I placed it in the blue folder next to the florist invoice for $2,800. The same blooms she'd bragged about in her toast. Before bed, I drove back to White Rock Lake. The water was a sheet of silver under the moon. Fireflies blinked like the dots on an adding machine. I sat on the same bench as before, listening to the faint hum of the highway, the same rhythm as that old oven timer in my mind. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt level, balanced. The scale that someone had been leaning on for years finally righted itself. The ledger was complete. Every number matched, every insult reconciled. In the quiet, I whispered the closing line I'd written in my notebook weeks ago. Justice isn't noise, it's alignment. Then I closed the ledger, and for the first time since the wedding, I let the silence stay unmeasured. July 2nd. 2 days after the Boardroom ambush, Dallas woke to a headline I'd been waiting for. Coley Venture Partners acquires Dalton Industrial Logistics. Jobs secured, new capital announced. The article was crisp, factual, merciless. It quoted Myra, "Our priority is safety, transparency, and on-time pay." It quoted Rex as senior advisor. It didn't quote me at all, and that was perfect. Justice works better without applause. By mid-morning, the story had spread through every warehouse in North Texas. Former clients called to congratulate Rex, thinking it was his strategic genius. Let them. My name wasn't there for a reason. I didn't need a headline, I had a ledger. I sat at my kitchen table with the paper unfolded beside my coffee mug. The steam rose and smudged the print where it said, "Jobs secured." I underlined it in pencil, then folded the paper into thirds and filed it behind the bank slip marked 627 wire confirmation. At 11:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. Even. "Can we talk?" A pause, then another. Even. "Ava's gone to stay with her parents for a bit. We met at the same diner on Lemon Avenue where I'd first met Coley. Evan looked younger somehow, like the bravado had been rinsed off him. He stirred his coffee until it went cold. "I didn't know it was that bad," he said. "Dad, Rex, I mean, he made it sound like business as usual." "He's good at that," I said. "So was I once." He looked up, eyes glassy. "You didn't have to humiliate me." "I didn't," I said quietly. "You did that by standing still when you should have stood beside me." He swallowed hard. "I was scared to lose them." I nodded. "Then maybe it's time to build." Something you can't lose. I slid an envelope across the table, a copy of the employment offer Myra had drafted the day before. Dispatcher, 28-hour, benefits, start date, July 14th. His hands trembled as he opened it. She said you'd be good in operations, I added. You know the system. You'll report to her, not to me. He looked up. You fixed all this for me? No, I said. I fixed what you broke and left the rest standing. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was clean. Somewhere behind us, a kid clinked ice in a soda glass, and the sound felt like punctuation. When we stood to leave, Evan hesitated. Why did you record her that night? I smiled. Because truth has a short shelf life when it's only spoken. He nodded, and for the first time in months, I saw the boy I'd raised, the one who used to count nickels in a mason jar for his mother's birthday gifts. As we walked into the noon light, the air carried the faint smell of asphalt and freedom. I told him one last thing before we went our separate ways. Son, forgiveness doesn't erase debt, it settles it. That night I sat in the dark again, the newspaper folded neatly beside my ledger. The timer ticked once more in my head, but this time not out of anger. It was just a reminder that every insult, every bill, every silence eventually reaches maturity. Justice, when timed right, doesn't shout. It posts itself quietly, like a business notice in the morning paper. Mid-July. The days slowed into that heavy kind of summer where the air feels older than you. The Dalton deal had gone through. The papers were filed, the checks cleared, and the headlines moved on. My world, for the first time in months, went still. I bought a second-hand fishing rod from Academy Sports, $39, and a reminder that simplicity costs less than pride. The cashier said, "Catching anything this season?" I smiled. Already did. Back home, Lydia stopped by with lemon bars and new envelopes for my files. You keeping copies of everything? She asked. 3 sets, I said, holding up the stack. Wire confirmation, purchase agreement, florist invoice. The 3 papers that began and ended the war. She laughed. You're a menace. With manners. Inside my safety deposit box at Oak Cliff. Credit Union, box number 314. The original wire slip sat beside the folded florist invoice. I kept them not out of spite, but out of reverence. Paper had become my weapon, my compass, and my peace offering to the future. Coley invited me to tour the yard that week. He'd installed shade sails over the loading area, the kind Elena always wanted for our patio. Myra walked me through the new chassis schedule, taped to the wall, every truck route mapped like veins. You gave us air, she said quietly. I shook my head. You kept it clean. I just opened a window. The crews nodded when I passed, not with pity, not with fear, just recognition. The kind of nod men give another man who's done his part and doesn't need applause. Evans started in dispatch that Monday. Myra texted me a photo, him in a reflective vest, headset on, laughing at something out of frame. $28, an hour, benefits, and a union-secured schedule. He brings his own lunch now. She said he even stays late some nights. I didn't reply. Some silences are earned. As for Ava, she launched an events inspiration blog, all pastels and platitudes. Finding beauty after betrayal, her tagline read. Fitting, I thought. Everyone needs a version of truth they can live with. We do not follow each other. One night I dropped by Lydia's porch to hand her a small card. Inside was a handwritten note, for your steadiness when mine cracked. A thank you and a $200 gift card tucked between the pages. She hugged me once, quick and quiet. You can breathe now, she said. Back at home, the house hummed the way it used to when Elena would bake late at night. I sat at the kitchen table, ledger open to the last page. Under the final entry, 6:30 Boardroom ambush, I wrote in steady ink, closed. No balance due. Then, below it smaller, repaid in silence. I left the ledger open until the ink dried, then turned off the light. The oven timer on the counter sat unwound, still and peaceful. For once, there was nothing left to count. August. Dallas had turned into an open furnace, 102 degrees and still rising. The kind of heat that bleaches the color out of everything except regret. The newspapers had moved on. The gossip cooled, and for the first time since the wedding, I felt what peace sounded like. Air conditioning humming, blinds half closed, no one needing anything from me. A postcard arrived one morning. Santa Fe Canyon, blue sky, sunlight like polished brass. The handwriting on the back was Rex's, recognizable even when shaky. "We'll rebuild elsewhere," it said. No apology, no bitterness, just a sentence that looked smaller than the man who wrote it. I pressed the card flat with 2 fingers and slipped it behind the florist invoice in my folder. That invoice had been the first proof that lies cost money. Now it was the last one I'd ever need to keep. That evening I baked Elena's peach cobbler. The kitchen filled with the smell of butter and brown sugar, the sound of the oven ticking like a soft metronome. I ate standing at the counter straight from the dish, the way I used to when she was alive. Outside, the horizon was still pulsing, with heat, and somewhere downtown, new trucks with Coley Logistics logos were rolling off the line. At exactly 8:14 p.m., I turned off the oven timer. The same minute Ava had called me a fat pig into a microphone under a chandelier. The timer clicked once, then silence. I looked around my quiet kitchen at the ledger closed for good on the table and said the only line that still belonged. "To me, you didn't lose me," I whispered, setting the fork down. "You gave me away," and with that I exhaled the last of it, the insult, the noise, the debt. Just a man, a kitchen, and an oven timer that no longer had work to do. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're listening at night, set your thermostat the way you like it. No one else gets a vote.